Yeah, we are live now. Go ahead, ma'am.
So, good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to all at Vichar Vimarsh NUV Idea Fest 2020. To take the event forward, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nilay Yagnik, Provost and Vice Chancellor at Navrachna University. May I request you, sir, to deliver the welcome address?
Thank you, Chaitali. Firstly, I wish to thank Dr. Vandana and the Center for Education, Innovation, and Research for organizing this very interesting and a very innovative talk by a colleague who's speaking right now live from Singapore, Miss Aparna. So welcome, Miss Aparna. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to your session. The Center for Education, Innovation, and Research was set up about a year back. And the idea was, as a group, as a Navrachna Education Society and the Navrachna University itself, we have several years of experience in the field of education. So we thought we should naturally now not only document these innovations, but continuously be a thought leader in the field of education and innovations in education for the society outside. And that is why we set up the Center for Education Innovation. And the Vichar Vimarsh Idea Fest, which again was introduced last year by Dr. Vandana and her team, is a very interesting discussion and dialogue that happens on new areas and new disciplines. So this time the theme that we are looking at is digital spaces. Now, when we speak of digital spaces, and today's specific talk on digital anthropology, digital is an area personally of interest to me as well. And when we speak about anthropology, or rather digital anthropology, we're talking about human behavior and behavior when people work in the digital frameworks, in digital eras, right? Now, the first starting point of that is also the interface that you see, the human-computer interface. And there's tremendous research happening in the field of human-computer interface and human-computer interaction. And it's highly interdisciplinary as well. So this is, and now in this particular talk, I'm sure it goes much deeper into this topic, and not just about interface, but much deeper to cover about behavior, how you and I behave in a digital scenario. So I'm also looking forward to this talk from Aparna, and welcome once again to Navrachna University. And Navrachna University, all of us here, we are looking forward to this lecture. And sometime when you are in India, please do drop in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for the warm welcome address. Could I please invite Dr. Vandana Tergaonkar, Head Center for Education, Innovation and Research and Associate Professor at Navrachna University, to give us an idea about Vichar Vimarsh. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chaitali. So just a brief on this theme, which Dr. Nilay Yagnik has already mentioned. The first edition of Vichar Vimarsh was conducted last year, where the exploration was about storytelling, translation, reading, writing, all tools of expression and tools of creativity. And what subtly emerged from this exploration was the necessity to be tolerant to various ideas. Now, this year, we moved to the exploration of digital space. And the rationale for identifying this theme was the immediate context of technology-mediated space in which we live and function, and will perhaps be doing so for quite some time. So the aspects of digital space that we intend to explore are digital narratives, digital humanities, and digital culture. Incidentally, we are just 2 weeks away from the International Women's Day. And the talk today by Aparna on understanding local digital context through the lens of gender is well positioned and timely. We are keen to listen to you, Aparna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I am honored to introduce our speaker of the day, Aparna Nammuputiri. She is a final year research scholar in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at the Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. Her field of research is Indian digital feminism, wherein she pursues an interdisciplinary approach spanning digital cultures and feminist ethnography to study the influence of the internet and social media on the lives of women. Through her research work, she is trying to put forward methodologies to understand and research the digital, especially highlighting the local Indian perspectives. Her allied areas of interest within gender studies include network analysis, posthumanism, and cultural studies, and she has presented papers at national and international conferences. She completed her master's in English language and literature from Madras University and bachelor's in English honors from Delhi University, in addition to obtaining CELTA certification from Singapore. It would be a delight to hear Aparna ma'am speak on the topic digital anthropology and its significance to India, understanding local digital context through the lens of gender. We welcome you, ma'am. May I request you to deliver the talk?
Yes, thank you so much to Navratna University and the organizers of the talk series. I'm really honored and very excited to talk about a theme or a subject that's very close to my heart and also the backbone of my PhD research. So yeah, I'll start now. Okay, I hope it's visible.
Yes.
Perfect.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. All right. So before I begin, I have been told that I'm speaking to a diverse audience, both from within the academia and belonging to different disciplines, as well as students, and also a few from outside the academia. So this talk, I have to confess, is quite chock full with information that pertains both to a general audience as well as to prospective students of digital anthropology or digital ethnography. So if I will be skipping over a few slides and not going into detail because I feel that that might take up too much time. So if you need to clarify anything, I'd be really happy to go back and explain in detail on one or two slides. That's all. Okay, so here it goes. Okay, so the outline of the talk would be something like this. So I'll introduce with a short historical overview of digital anthropology and how it relates to India in the present context. And then I'll talk about the interdisciplinary or the trans-disciplinary nature of digital ethnography and go to the key question of the hour, which is whether there can be an Indian digital anthropology. Then I'll talk about a few aspects which would be useful to students, which is about the praxis of digital ethnography, how you actually do digital ethnography or digital fieldwork. I'll also talk about my digital fieldwork toolkit. I know toolkit is a controversial term in the current times, but I mean, this is not a politically loaded word over here. It's just a set of guidelines that I have devised over my PhD journey to understand what digital ethnography really is and how to do it. Okay. Then I'll look at a few impediments that one might come across in one's digital ethnography study, and end with some examples of visualization, manual and automated visualization and patterning techniques that one can adopt when we are looking at digital data. Okay, so coming to the introduction. So digital anthropology, it is something that that's ripe at the moment, right? Digital is something that has been churning up, especially during the COVID times when our mobilities are restricted. We have been interacting with the world through our digital modes of communication and interaction, right? So when did this actually come into academia? In 1990s, it was Arturo Escobar, who is an anthropologist who looked at digital from an academic perspective and decided to use the digital in terms of its influence with the societies that he was studying. Okay. However, because this talk has a gender angle to it, and I am a feminist, digital feminist ethnographer, I would like to talk about the feminist aspect of it, which is starting right in the middle of century, where Ada Lovelace was talking about codes from a tailoring perspective, from a fabric perspective. Okay, and then we come to the 1960s or 70s when the internet actually became an entity with the US military communications. But then, of course, it was a closed network. Now, when we come slightly towards the current times, during the 1990s, we have Sadie Plant, Donna Haraway, and so on, who are talking about the possibilities that technology affords women in a feminist uprising or for women's empowerment. And we also have Catherine Hales talking about the intricate connection of biology with technology. Okay. I know these are some very dense academic terms that I'm throwing out here, but it's just so that I can have a concise introduction. I can do justice to the theme. Okay. So in the 2000s, so that is when I think at least India was becoming really familiar with the internet or the computer, the connectivity aspect of computers, right? So it was in 2000 that this technophoria really took over the feminist world, and the fourth wave feminism was also introduced, where where feminists were looking at the empowering angle of technology. So there was a lot of discourse on that, how technology helps women to come together, talk about or unite against patriarchal oppression and so on. However, as we moved closer to 2010, this hope or promising potential of technology in terms of overthrowing patriarchal structures was slightly dimmed, because feminists began to realize that the internet is just largely a reflection of society, right? So there's still a lot of patriarchal oppression and female subjugation that is happening on the internet as well. So then it was post 2010 that a reconceptualization of internet technologies with respect to gender began to take place. And that is when India or Indian scholars came into the picture. It was only after about 2010 that Indian feminists began to produce content, or at least feminists worldwide were starting to look at India as a potential site for digital ethnographic studies. Okay, so we have names such as Sujata Subramanian, Sahana Udupa, Radhika Gajala, who are all contemporary feminist digital scholars. Okay, so in 2020, where we are right now, 2021, where we are right now, especially after passing through the COVID times, we have realized more than ever that the internet is something that we really cannot do without, right? And it is something that we are using every day to engage with the world outside. So that is the overview of digital anthropology and a gender perspective of digital ethnography. Okay, so digital anthropology has been called by various names. So when Arturo Escobar was using it, he was calling it the netnography, because internet, the net was something that we were using, right, as a term at that point of time. Then it was called cyber ethnography, cyber studies. And in the present times, we're calling it digital anthropology or digital ethnography. So here, I hope I don't have to go into the differentiations of anthropology versus ethnography, right? Because what the points that I have to make in this talk are largely related to my journey with digital ethnography. However, I'm sure it will be applicable to digital anthropology as well on a broader scale, broader structure. When we're looking for the clarity of methodological perspective, I think using the term ethnography would be much better. So I'll be using that term from henceforth. Okay. Now, when we the second point is about my transition from conventional ethnographic fields into the digital spaces. So I'm researching on Malayali women in Kerala who use the digital and how the digital interacts with them, influences them, and how they make sense of the digital, the lived realities of Malayali women, digital Malayali women in Kerala. Okay, so when I had decided that I'm going to take an ethnographic approach, I wanted to hear from the horse's mouth. I wanted to know what the women were doing with the digital or on the digital. So I went to my field. I met them. I spoke with them personally offline, and there were multiple interviews that I had. Okay, and after that, I was looking at my findings and I was trying to make sense of it, analyzing it. Then I realized that there's a really big chunk of information missing, which is about what my respondents were doing on the digital spaces and how I would be able to understand them or analyze them. So they were telling me a lot of things about what they were doing on the digital and how the digital made sense to them. But I wanted to know firsthand what the content was that they were consuming, what the content was that they were putting out there. So which is why I felt that there had to be a significant online component to my research. And that is how digital ethnography came into the picture. So that's when I decided to go onto the digital spaces where my respondents, produce content or consume content and look at it for myself. Okay. In that way, I felt that there was this nice bridge between the offline and the online spaces of my respondents. Okay. So then I had to look at the literature. I had to look at how I would take up this initiative, because back in 2016 or end of 2016, studies on digital ethnography, or the term itself, was pretty new. And even I didn't really coin that. I didn't really start using the term digital ethnography until maybe late 2017. So I just wanted to know what they were doing on the internet for myself. Okay, so that was my simple aim. So then what was the literature that was helping me? Whatever literature I found on digital studies, on digital, on studies of human societies from the digital angle, were largely from the global north. I was quite dismayed to find that there was no current studies from the social sciences field on women in India. So there were a few, of course, but not many, and not really much from the digital angle, unless you count the digital humanities studies that were out there, which is not really what I was looking for. So I had to borrow a lot of Western content, conventional ethnographic Western content, and utilize that to create a methodology that would help me understand my respondents' lived realities on the internet. Okay, so which is how I come to this interdisciplinary or trans-disciplinary nature of digital ethnography. So I had to borrow from social sciences, I had to borrow from data sciences, I had to borrow from statistics. So I had to combine, I had combined research from so many different disciplines and merge them together to produce this multi-sourced methodology that would help me to actually do digital research, social sciences research. Okay, so this kind of really helped me at the beginning. It was really hard because I didn't know what I was doing. But then as I went forward with this, I realized that it is such a flexible way in which to do research. You have a flexible methodology, or rather a forgiving methodology, which would allow you to borrow from multiple disciplines and create your own customized methodology. What is better than that? So conventional anthropology has this very rigid structure, right? So you need to be in the field, and there are so many tenets associated with it. However, digital methodology offers you the potential to be multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary, which I feel is the best, is the highlight of digital ethnography as a methodology, if one is doing that study. Okay, and also we have the potential to use so many skills. I mean, we can use our digital tools. We can use so many automated tools to extract data, to make meanings out of it, to create patterns, to interpret them. So we can really play to our strengths here. And finally, one of the quite attractive points for budding students is that there is a real potential for us to make a mark in the field, especially because the literature from India in this domain is rather scant. So if you do a research and you're really putting a lot of effort into it, then it's pretty sure that you can make a mark in the field, and you can help people who are coming behind you to do similar research. So it's kind of like a building, growing canon. It's very new. It's changing, it's evolving, but it's also your opportunity to build to this growing canon, which I feel is really nice, a really nice hope for students. Okay, so now that's about my journey. Now coming to the million-dollar question: can there be an Indian digital anthropology? What do you think? So anthropology, we all know, it's the study of human societies, structures of societies. And the digital, well, India is not alien to the digital. Post-2000, we have all had, most of us at least have had computers in our homes. We are interacting on the internet, on the digital spaces. And India has so many microcosms of societies, right? So then Indian digital anthropology, these three terms have a great potential to interact with each other and make meanings, right? So yes, before I go into details, I here in this slide, I'll be showing you some examples of either ongoing digital ethnographic studies or a potential to do so many in-depth, beautiful, complex studies on digital ethnography. So here goes the first example. So this is the most current one, I think, Disha Ravi and the toolkit, right? The controversy. So there's no way that this would have happened if there was no digital presence in the farmers' protest, right? And how that protest has garnered so much balance in the entire globe. Second one, we have Bilkis Dadi standing right at the front in the image. It's the Shaheen Bagh protest again. This protest again. So would it have even garnered even India's attention if the digital was not a strong component in that protest? Definitely not, right? So it's all about the connectivity. Of course, we are coming back to the connectivity that the digital spaces provide. Next, we come to #MeToo. So this campaign, it not only created ripples in India, but also worldwide, right? And we know about the connected Losha list that was published, which brought out the darker sides of academia. So that also exists. That also happened because we had a platform to raise our voice and protest against the inequalities that were rampaging our societies, right? So the digital, again, being such a key central theme over there, or a medium for us to interact. And #ReadyToWait. So I think some of the audience, if some of you are from the southern parts of the country, you would be familiar with this. This is regarding the Shabarimala women's entry verdict and the controversies, the huge furor that happened in 2018 in Kerala, and which is still continuing. So it's about the entry of women of menstruating ages into the temple precinct and so on. So this was one campaign which was put forth by the religious Hindus in the Kerala, the women who said they are not going to enter the temple, but they are ready to wait. Okay, so and this is slightly old now, Women in Cinema Collective. So this is a Facebook page, and it has a huge following. So this collective, it not only exists online, it is an actual collective of female cine artists in the Malayalam movie industry, who stand for better working opportunities and equal pay and all the other gender aspects of being part of the Malayalam cine industry. So it's a gender equality, pro gender equality collective from the Malayalam movie industry. And I think this is the only such collective that exists in India. So this was another initiative that came to be only because of the digital. That's how they're garnering followers and making conversations. Okay, so these examples show us that India is already part of digital ethnography or digital anthropology, because whether you study it, whether we acknowledge it or not, the potential is ripe. I mean, there's so much of possibilities, and every day new issues are cropping up which demand an introspection. And the digital is such a key component in all of these issues. And as academicians, I think this is the right time to think about India from the digital angle, and how ethnography can be made use of to analyze or interpret, critically interrogate on the issues that are plaguing our country at the present juncture. Okay. All right. So now coming to some of the practical sides of ethnography. Now, this is more focused towards the students in the audience. Okay. So when one undertakes digital ethnography or any ethnographic study for that matter, ethics is one thing that I really cannot stress enough, because these tenets that are down here, these phrases that are down here, these are derived from Western feminist scholars, both conventional scholars, both conventional ethnographic scholars, as well as a few digital ethnographic scholars. So these are some of the guiding principles that I had in mind when I went to the field, both offline as well as online. So then, if you look at it from this angle, digital ethnography is not really very different from regular ethnography, where you have to be mindful of the ethics of this whole issue. So one sad thing is that when one does digital ethnography, we tend to forget that we are dealing with human beings, societies, lived experiences of people. We tend to see the data. the data points, the statistics, the numbers, the posts, the tweets, the Insta stories. So that is not really, I mean, who is creating this? It's human beings. It's living, feeling, breathing people who are creating this, and it's their lives that we are studying, whether we are doing it on a personal scale, one-to-one, or we are looking at a meta scale, looking at just groups. It's still about human beings, right? So the ethics have to be placed right at the center in order for us to do a just and truthful job of the whole thing. If we want to present a just picture of our findings, I think ethics is something that we really cannot ignore, and we cannot just make digital ethnography into another data science project. Okay, it's not just numbers; it's human beings that we're talking about. So I think the same guidelines and the ethics that one needs to be mindful of when we're doing a conventional anthropological or ethnographic work can be taken onto the digital realm when we are doing digital ethnographic studies. So not sure if I should go deeper into each phrase. I'll just read them out. So these are all Western theorists. We have Donna Haraway, who is the cyber feminist, the quintessential cyber feminist, if I may say so. Leela Abul-Lughod, Nensel Lorraine. So Leela Abul-Lughod and Nensel Lorraine are conventional feminist ethnographers. So they are all talking about how the researcher can be unbiased, or at least acknowledge their bias, and how the researcher can create an atmosphere of transparency and non-hierarchical approach in their interviews or in their data collection data collection journeys. Okay, so I'll not go too much into detail on each phrase, and the kind of the meaning that I filtered out of these their works, these theorists' works, was that I need to have an open, unstructured, and in-depth conversation with my respondents. So offline, I was speaking to them 1 to 1.5 hours, either individually or in focus groups. And online, I was looking at the content that they were creating. So at no point in my PhD fieldwork did I forget that I was actually looking at human beings and their lives. So that is something that we really should never forget when we are doing digital ethnography. Okay. So you can ask me if you want more details onto each phrase at the end. Okay, so now this is my digital fieldwork toolkit. So these it has been simplified for the sake of clarity of prospective students. So there are 2 questions that one should ask when one is thinking about studying the digital. Okay, so the first one would be, what is the significance of the digital in the thesis? So thesis here, of course, any study. Okay. It can stand for any study. Is the digital going to be just a medium for data collection, or is it going to be a thematic component of the study? So medium, of course, I don't need to clarify over there, right? The place from where we collect the data. But the thematic component is much more significant, right? It has a much greater importance in the study. So that the question that you should ask there is whether the data that you collected is possible to be collected without the digital. Is the digital making a difference to the kind of data that you're collecting? Is the digital creating the data that you're collecting? If the answers to all these questions are yes, then I think the digital would become a thematic component in your study, which is what happened to me. So first, I felt that I have to look at it from the digital spaces. I should use the digital medium to look at my data. But then while I was doing that, I quickly realized that the digital was what was making these things possible. So then it became a very important thematic component of my thesis. Okay, so that is the first question. The second question is whether you're using quantitative methodologies or qualitative methodologies to collect data. Quantitative methodologies would take us into computer science or data science projects, which is not the focus of this talk. So qualitative methods are where anthropology or ethnography come in. Okay, so then what are the skills or resources that you require to undertake this? First and foremost, you need to have a working knowledge of communication technologies or the platform, the social media platform that you are using to study your respondents. Okay, so if it is Facebook, you need to know how Facebook terms work, the interactions that one can have on Facebook. If it's Insta or Twitter, you need to have domain-specific knowledge about how that platform works. And if it is about WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, or the other so many number of private communication apps that are coming up, then you have your own set of issues with that, because it's more private. So you need to have the privacy privacy terms in mind, and so on. So you need to know the space that you're working with. You need to really know what the terms mean, how people interact, what are the possibilities afforded by that platform, and so on. Second one, coding skills. Okay, so this is a yes or no area. So I come from a literature background, and I eased into social sciences quite late. So my coding skills are not really, I wouldn't say it's top notch. So I was learning. While I was doing this, I realized that it is essential to study coding, and I kind of garnered a few, skills that would help me to maneuver any difficulties that I might have. But if you do have coding skills, or you intend to undertake a really intense automated data collection study, then I suggest that you learn a few coding languages or programming languages, which would help you in that particular work. Okay, and the third one is the ease of translation. Okay, so are you looking at data that is primarily in English? If yes, you have a much smoother road ahead of you. But are you looking at digital data that is in regional Indian languages? If yes, you need to be really sure that you have the scholarship to translate them, to understand them, to interpret them, so that the translation issues really come into play when you're looking at the local context in India, which is the title of the talk, right? So it's not India as a whole. India is divided into so many microcosms, right, which all offer up different stories, different experiences. So then, if you're looking at these smaller localities, smaller communities, then you need to know the regional languages that are being used there, and how those languages reflect on the internet, and how you make sense of them, and how you put them onto paper, and how you present them to a wider audience. So these issues are also, these skills are also important for a journey on or through the digital. Okay, coming to the difficulties that one might face in one's digital ethnography study. Like I said, translation issues. This can happen at any stage, actually. So even if you are really proficient in the language, and you're a native speaker of that Indian language, you might run into problems during your analysis phase, or your coding. If you're using the automated coding softwares, the coding, even Google Translate, even if you're using that, we know that it really doesn't do justice to our beautifully complex Indian languages, right? So then how do you translate those very particular socio-cultural, socio-political slangs or phrases into English? And how do you make sense of that? How do you interpret them? How do you present them in your visualizations? So these are, it's an issue. It's difficult, but definitely, I mean, as Indian researchers, I think we can find a way out. And this is where I feel that collaborative research comes so much more into focus. So a core social sciences professional or a researcher might not have really great idea about language processing tools or language softwares, translation software. So if you join hands with a colleague from a computer sciences background, and you can produce a collaborative work, that will be much better in its output for the audience, right? Okay, so the second one would be the authenticity or the verifiability issues. So again, if we are using regional Indian language content, then how do we authentically represent the experiences that our respondents have to a wider global audience? And how do you justify or vouch for the authenticity of that to a potential reviewer, right? So this is another issue that one might run into. Next, the bias issue. So bias can happen from any side. So it could be the researcher's bias, the research fields or the research subject's bias against the researcher. It could be the reviewer's bias. It could be an editor's bias. So it can happen from any angle, right? But we cannot do anything about others, but we can help ourselves in order to minimize or at least acknowledge that bias by looking at the ethical guidelines that I mentioned in one of the previous slides. So if we really strive to create a transparent, inclusive environment during our interactions with our respondents, and we are very conscious of that fact when we are collecting digital data, we can kind of put that bias out there and not gloss over it, but put it out there, acknowledge it, and kind of reduce the fuzziness around this aspect. It's very fuzzy. Bias is a very fuzzy issue. It's a very touchy, fuzzy issue. But if we acknowledge it and we say that, yes, it is biased, and this is the reason for the bias, and this is how I have tried to overcome that bias, then it's much clearer, right? It's transparent, both to our research subjects as well as to the readers of our work. Coming to internet APIs and restrictions. So if you're working with a platform that is other than Facebook, you might not really have too much of a trouble with accessing content for your academic studies. However, if it is Facebook that we're talking about, it is pretty difficult for you to get unrestricted and useful content easily from Facebook's algorithms. So there are API restrictions, and this happened post the Cambridge Analytica scandal. So it is quite difficult, and we need to. And this is where manual data mining comes into play. So if it is automated, then we have to surpass all these API restrictions, and we have to write letters, and we have to wait for the approvals to come. So it's a long, drawn out, painful procedure. But if we are looking at manual data collection, and we are obtaining the permission of our respondents, in written or oral form, to collect data from their timelines or from whatever is visible to the public eye, then you can kind of surpass these restrictions, and you can still get useful information about your research field. Okay. Now coming to data volatility. Okay. Now this is an important aspect, because internet is changing, right, at breakneck pace, especially in India. It's so volatile at the moment. We have so many issues, going around, and everything is being presented on the internet through so many perspectives, right? So how do we include and how do we exclude? So we need to make a conscious, but it is painful, it is difficult, but it has to be deliberate effort or decision to stop collecting data, or to include certain things and to exclude certain other issues out, depending on the scope of your study. So for me, I completed my digital fieldwork in 2019. So just before the COVID breakout, I completed it. And I had decided that I will not go beyond this in terms of collecting data. So I have a pre-COVID version of how my respondents have lived their lives. Definitely, it's going to be much different now, after so many months of looking at the world only through the digital, right? However, I have not looked at that. So it's a very conscious but deliberate effort, because that is the scope of my work. So one needs to make a clear delineation about where to draw the lines when it comes to the data that you're going to be looking at, or you're going to be studying. Okay, so that is the other aspect that one needs to be mindful of. Okay. All right. So the next few slides are going to be the examples of my data visualization and how I've gone about it. How are we doing on time, Professor Vandana?
7 to 8 minutes.
Okay, then I'll just quickly go through it. All right. Okay, so this is one automated data mining project that I had done. It was in 2017, so it was pre-Cambridge Analytica. So I'll just quickly show you a larger version of this. I know it's not very visible over here. Okay, I hope you can see the graph.
Yeah.
All right. So this was a project about this Facebook page named Feminism in India. So you can see that node right there. So it was done with an automated data extraction software called NetWiz. I'm not very sure. I don't think it's very useful right now with all the restrictions. So at that point, it was pretty useful. So this is Feminism in India. You can see that node right there in the center. And we have all these other Facebook pages. So it's the graph looks like this. So it's a pretty complex graph. So all the other pages are related to feminism in India because they all align to the common theme of gender. It could be from the male perspective or from the female perspective, and it spans the globe, right? And the connections that are here are about the common areas of interest between these pages. And when you look at the nodes, the circles that denote the independent pages, the size of the circle is dependent on the number of shares that the posts of that page have. Right. So although feminism in India is what we were looking at, our focus page, we see that the largest number of posts being shared are from the Good Men Project. Okay, and then women's rights news are also there. So this is about the connection, the network of Facebook pages that are aligned to a single or a common interest. So it was done in 2017, way back. Okay, so I'll just stop this and I'll share the PPT again. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so this was done on this was done about the Women in Cinema Collective. It was a short project that was done, and this graph, it shows the responses of the male and female comments on the WCC Facebook page and the sentiment range of that of the male and female comments. So we can see that male comments are highly oppositional to WCC's directives or their interests, and female comments are largely in support of them. This was a conference presentation. Okay, next one we have the Sabarimala verdict. Okay, so here we have two graphs where I have looked at the Facebook posts and the sentiments of those posts with respect to the support for the verdict allowing women to enter the Sabarimala temple, and the oppositional posts regarding the verdict. Okay, so I have done a sentiment analysis in this particular graph, where I've looked at different sentiments of the posts from male and female users, or male and female Keralites. Okay, this is again another conference proceeding. Okay, now this is from my PhD fieldwork, where you can see the different types of content or posts on Facebook. So these are from my respondents' timelines. Okay, so we have image, meme, video, text, and so on, and we can see that images have the highest number of posts. The blue color is the images, and for my respondents, they had shared and created more images than any other type of posts. And this is a final example. So here we see the frequency of digital activity of my respondents in a day. So we see that night 8 p.m. in the evening is when there's a spike in the digital activities of my respondents. That is when most of my respondents are using the internet. Okay, so this is, again, these are all ways in which I was analyzing my digital data. Okay, just a few examples. Okay, so I will conclude here. I'm ending my talk here. So the only concluding statement that I would like to put out here is that this is really the time when academicians and students should look at the digital and try to critically introspect into how the digital is impacting us, and produce those local contextual studies, situated studies about our own independent communities or communities that we are very interested in, and provide those small micro versions of India, and let the world know that India is really living through the digital and using the digital, and using it for empowering potential and opportunities, creating opportunities for ourselves, and so on. So that is all that I would like to say. So this is the ripe hour for us to make use of the digital from an ethnographic angle. Thank you so much for being such a patient audience. So I welcome your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for briefing us right from the history of the digital anthropology to different angles of women empowerment, and answering the question, can really India be a part of digital anthropology, which India is already a part of? Now we are open to the questions from the audience. May I request Dr. Archana Tomar, the program chair of MSW, to coordinate the question answer round. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chaitali. I request the participants to kindly post their questions in the chat so that we can ask them to Aparna. Till the questions are coming, I'm interested in knowing what was the age group of these women participants that you were working with?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Uh,
You need to
Sorry,
unmute.
sorry. Yeah. So the age group spanned from 20 years to 60 years. So I had three determinants for my study. So one was age, the generational aspect of digital use. The second was the economic, conditions of the women, and the third one was the educational, qualifications. So these three determinants were what kind of helped me to understand the digital activities of women in Kerala. It's really interesting, from 20 to 60 years of age. Some of
That's
the
a big span.
it is a big span, and I spoke to about 150 women over the past 2.5, 3 years. So the data is extremely interesting. It's very exciting.
Speaking, I can still understand that when you're one-to-one talking to them and finding out what they have done in these digital spaces is one aspect of it. But other aspect, how did you monitor? How did you see what kind of activities they are doing? Because I may say something, but I may really be busy with that kind of digital space or not is another kind of an aspect. So I'm
Which
curious
is
to know.
that is
Ask
the
other
exact question. That's the exact question that brought me to the digital ethnography methodology. So my respondents were telling me a lot of things, but when I was looking at their timelines, I could see that a lot of the things that they told me were absent on their digital on their digital portals. However, some of the things that they didn't tell me in person were there. So that is a very interesting question. It's about the silences, right? It's a silences on the online mode and the silences on the offline mode. So that's a theme that I'm putting in my thesis. So it's about the silences. It's about where the data has gone. Where is it? And why is it absent? So.
Dr. Archana, I have a question.
Yeah,
Aparna, you have talked about three determinants when you were analyzing the data, but if it is possible for you to let us know, did the region, the urban region and the suburban region, have any influence on the kind of data that you analyzed and the findings that emerged?
Well, the region did not really have so much of an impact. It was more about the educational and the economic standing of the individuals. So whether it be a rural area or an urban area, I had met maids, domestic helpers from urban areas, and I had met homemakers who belonged to a middle class family from the rural area. So there was not much of a difference in terms of the areas, but about the educational and economic aspects, that is where the difference happened, and of course the age. So because Kerala is not, one would be hard pressed to find that completely rural area in Kerala, because the state itself is so small and it's largely developed, in terms of economic possibilities. So I think that's specific to Kerala in general.
Okay, there is a question now in the chat box, which is how do you protect the data on digital platform while collecting and later too making sure they aren't hacked or duplicated or used by anyone else?
Okay, so protecting the data, it is, again, I mean, I'm not using some a particular paid software to protect my data. I'm using Google Drive. So it is as prone to hacking as any other data on the digital spaces. So I cannot really vouch for it to be completely secure. But however, I do change my passwords regularly, and all the necessary digital hygiene that one needs to follow is being conducted. And Google Drive is something that my institute has provided me with. I have unlimited storage, so that is an efficient way for me to use that. And I also have NAS drive, which you might be familiar with that. It's these large, not very large. I mean, how would I describe it? I could have shown to. Okay, so I have a NAS drive. You can just Google it. I have a NAS drive also, so I do have a backup of that of the data on my NAS drive, which has again quite a lot of storage in it. So. And these are the two ways in which I store it. Okay, about being hacked or duplicated or used by anyone else, again, I'm not a computer science expert, so I'm just following the same digital hygiene measures that anybody would follow, anybody has to follow on in the present time. So that is all that I can say over there. And when it comes to making use of the data without the I'm really more concerned about the ethics. Again, I'm reiterating that it's about how I would use the data after this study. So after my PhD, I do have the data with me, right? So I told my respondents that I asked the respondents whether they would be comfortable in me using it for other studies in future, apart from my thesis. So some of them were okay with that. Some of them who had provided me with sensitive information were not very comfortable with that. So that is there in my consent form. So I have a consent form which I provide to all the participants, and that is where they tick and they agree or disagree to my request. So there's another way. Thank you.
There is another question.
Okay, so next one.
What is the difference between digital humanities and digital anthropology?
Okay, so digital humanities is a really, it's really a transdisciplinary area where you can use social sciences or humanities to create content. So you have exciting projects, data science projects, you have digital literature coming up. So it's a really large area where there's a lot of scope for creativity. I mean, there's also a lot of academic studies out there, and if you just Google it, and there are these, most of the Ivy League universities have their own digital humanities sites where you can look at these very exciting, very interesting, projects which combine maybe old English literature and make sense of it in the present sense. So one example that immediately pops to my mind is about the British literature that is there. I think the Victorian British literature. So they have used the topography, the places, the locales of the British literature in that particular period, and they are mapping it in the present Google map format. So they're looking at these areas and they're looking at how those areas have changed. If I remember correctly, I think it was done I think it was the York University site that had it. Not very sure. Yeah, so that is digital humanities. So it has more potential to do creative studies, and combine these, one might say slightly, in the present times being ignored areas such as history of English literature, history of language. So these kind of areas which are classic, they are being brought to light again, brought to the forefront again with digital technologies. Or through data science projects to create very interesting, very novel concepts. So that is digital humanities. So digital anthropology, okay, that is what you have, no? Digital anthropology. Okay, so digital anthropology is what I have explained in the talk. So it's about looking at the impact of the digital on human societies. Okay, so digital ethnography would be looking at a microcosm of such a society, or a smaller community or a smaller group of people would be digital ethnography, and how they interact on the digital spaces in one short sentence.
Any other questions?
Okay.
You have some question on YouTube? No, not yet.
Okay.
Participants, you can
Hello?
unmute yourself and ask. Yes.
Archana ma'am, I would like to ask a small question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Somewhere in the qualitative analysis method, we have been told something called a theoretical saturation while data collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that applicable here?
Well, in an offline mode, yes, I would say that data saturation does occur. But on an online mode, I would say no. At least in my experience, when I look at my respondents, I said I've looked at over 100 women's digital presence and digital activities. There are common patterns, but then if you look at individual stories, individual posts, they're all different. I mean, they might be sharing a few of the very viral or very popular posts, but then if you look at the intentions behind those, so it's not just the intention is not just to look at the surface level, right? Not just look at the posts, not just look at the data, but it's the intention of a critical digital ethnographer should be to look at the causes, the reasons behind those acts. So I think that is how one can answer this data saturation question. So for me, it's the hardest thing at this point. I'm writing my thesis. I'm nearing the end of my thesis writing. So here, the hardest question that I have to ask myself every day is, how to bring out all the voices of my respondents. I'm sure this is something that all research students go through. How to bring out that variety, because each individual woman's activity on the digital spaces, it's different. They're all unique. So when you give so much of importance to the individuality or the autonomy of the research subject, then you start to see the reasons behind those activities, not just the superficial data or the data point or the post in this case. So I would say on a digital platform, this data saturation, if you're looking at it from a social sciences perspective, would be very low. But of course, if you're looking at it from a data science project perspective, then I guess, yes, you would quickly run to a data saturation mode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also would like to ask one question, if you permit me.
Yes, Rishi sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Aparna ma'am.
Thank you.
Nice session on digital understanding. Now, as you said, Denise, trying to ask this saturation, data saturation. And in your study, it's about, as you said, you are able to collect data from 150 women. Now, the point is, as you rightly said, there is no data saturation. That means there is a scope to collect more data, because the qualitative study, when you as a researcher come to know that you are not able to collect different data or similar kind of data and patterns are set, then you stop collecting the data. Now, on another point, as you said that yes, there is a uniqueness in the data. From each woman you are able to collect different ideas. Now, I just want to know how you are going to analyze such a variety of data, and what exactly you're looking for when you are doing this kind of study. So I just want to know that, so that I also have some clarity in this.
Yes, that's a very good question.
Highlight on this. Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's exactly what I am doing right now. So what I have done is, we do find. So I'm being told over and over again by my committee, my thesis committee, that I have to look at patterns and not really look at the individual experiences. So what I have is I have a bibliography. Or secondary, an appendix to my thesis where I am giving the individual responses. So it's kind of like a compendium of my fieldwork experiences. So there's a bit of autobiographical element that comes into it, where I talk about my own role in the thesis. So I am a Malayali woman and I am a digital subject. So then I am also in one sense a research subject of my own research. So how that kind of happens, how that involvement happens, and also about the individual responses from my subjects, from my respondent base, and also in the finding section, I'm dividing it into different themes. So when one divides it into the findings into themes, then it's easy for us to, or I wouldn't say easy, it is more efficient for us to bring in the variety of voices. So when I look at a particular theme, for example, I have this theme called internet femininity, or internet femininity versus digital kulastri. So femininity and kulastri are socio-contextual. I mean, it's a word that came into a lot of controversy in Kerala. So these two words, this is kind of spanning the entire range of feminisms that I got to see in the field. So that is where I bring in the different angles of feminism and how the digital works through the lives of my respondents. So that is one chapter that I'm really a theme in my findings chapter that I'm really excited about. So when we devise themes which allow us to bring in the variety of voices, I think that is one way we can navigate that issue or negotiate that issue of lack of space or lack of scope to put out the to bring out the individual voices. So themes is one way I'm dealing with it right now, and also the appendix.
Yeah. Thank you, Aparna ma'am.
Question in the chat.
Thank you.
What are the typical questions you ask the women participants in your survey For which purpose women use digital platform the most? Education, entertainment, business, or any other?
Okay. Yeah. So the questions, like I said, I have had largely unstructured interviews. So the first interviews with all my respondents were unstructured, and it was only in the second or the third phases of my fieldwork that I started asking more pointed questions. Again, I gave my respondents the space to talk. So my questions were very limited. I was just interjecting when I wanted to know more about a particular point, and I stopped when I felt that it was making them uncomfortable. So it was mostly the respondents telling me what they were doing. So it is a bottom-up approach, which is what Nancy Lorraine prescribes. So you don't make the questions. You don't go to the field with a set of questions, rigid questions. You have a general idea. You want to know. Be curious. Now, you want to know about what the women are doing. And once you know what they're doing, then the research questions start forming. Right. So the research questions are something that I have to ask myself. I don't really ask those questions to my respondents. So I just listen to them. I try to be a good listener and get the information about their real lived experiences on the digital. And from those, for individual respondents, it might be different. So one person, if that person is a working mother belonging who's maybe a domestic helper and has 2 children, and has to share one phone and a limited data connectivity with her children and her husband and herself, then the questions that I ask her would be in that direction, in that manner, right? About who is using that the data the most. Are you giving your phone to your children for their studies? Are they using it for their entertainment? So those would be the questions. But if I'm talking to a woman who is a homemaker and who is very well educated and who has a very comfortable lifestyle, then my questions would be different. How many data connections? How many phones do you have? What are the models of your phone? What do you have a Wi-Fi at home? What is the data, the data speed that you have? So it'll be different, right? So you have to one has to customize the questions according to the respondents. Okay. In terms of education, entertainment, business, so these, okay, again, this is largely dependent on the determinants that I had mentioned. So again, this is something that I'm very, very happy to find out. So when you look at women belonging to the lower sections of society in terms of economic stability and education, they are using the internet much more for empowerment, empowerment or rather, personal growth. To learn more, for maybe PSC examination coaching, free coaching available on YouTube or these closed Facebook groups, or other skill development courses. Like, so if it's a tailor, she's looking at Instagram, she's looking at Facebook to get new designs for her customers. So these are the ways. So it's more for personal, professional growth for women belong to the lower sections. And when it comes to women belonging to the upper echelons of the society, it's largely for entertainment. Maybe Amazon Prime or Netflix, or they're looking at the latest, makeup trends. If you're looking at a woman between maybe 20 to 30 years of age, they're very interested in fashion. They're very interested in the latest grooming trends. So it is the information that I've received is quite. I'm very happy to get that kind of information where I see that women from the lower sections are using it for upward mobility.
Archana.
And upper sections, I mean, they already have that kind of comfort. So I think they're using it more for diverse entertainment needs, which is also great.
Archana madam, just one question to Aparna. Aparna, these respondents of around 150, were they distributed across the districts of Kerala? Because you will find a different kind of, in terms of digital literacy, you will find a different combination. If you go to Wayanad, it may be least.
Yeah.
When you come to Cochin or Trichy, it will be their literacy extent is very high. So were they distributed, or you can find a few districts in Kerala?
So I did not look at Wayanad because of my, because I was studying in Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and I had to come to Kerala during my vacation time to conduct the fieldwork. So I was not able to go to the far reaches of the state. So I did it in the other, most of the other states. So like you said, Wayanad, Idukki were 2 districts which I did not, look at. okay, what was your, okay, it was regarding the digital literacy, right? Yeah. So when it comes to women from lower education, lower economic groups, their digital literacy was slightly lower. But again, for youngsters in that group, it was quite high. They were using TikTok and Dubsmash. These were very, these were all the rage during the last few years. So they were using these, and they were creating so much of content, on these online platforms. So for the younger group, I felt that the digital literacy was pretty standard across the determinant variants. But when it comes to age, generational aspect was something that the lack of digital literacy was more prominent in. So when we look at women beyond the age of 45 or 50, they were not very comfortable with experimenting with the newer modes of digital communication. They just had a Facebook account, and they had WhatsApp. So, and most of them were being created for them by their children or somebody else. So that is where I felt that the age was where the digital literacy component was much more prominent. And also to a smaller extent, the economic and the educational standards. So, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other question? I have one question till the participants think. That is regarding language. Were you dealing with only Malayalam language, or you were looking at English? How were they communicating on Facebook or WhatsApp or whichever medium you saw?
So I had mixed languages. So I had Malayalam as well as English, depending on the respondents' comfort. So again, like I said, education was the key determinant in their ability to be using English comfortably. I mean, they were all able to use English. But then, of course, the variation was with respect to the educational qualifications of the respondents. So I did have Malayalam content, and also they were creating Malayalam content through those apps like Google app. We have those writing calligraphy apps where we can actually write in Malayalam script, and we can put it out there. So, but then again, the creation of content in Malayalam was largely relegated to the private social networking sites like WhatsApp. At that time, it was just WhatsApp, or maybe a bit of Google Chat, Google Messenger, and so on. So Malayalam was largely being used on those private channels, and on the public social networking sites such as Facebook, it was English, or it was shared Malayalam posts that were happening. And like I said, so there was this example that I shown, the images. The image posts are the highest across my respondents. So images don't always need to have a title. Sometimes they do have, and that is where there is Manglish being used. So it is Malayalam written in the English font. So that is what we call Manglish. Okay. So Manglish font was being used, especially when it came to the lower education groups. So when the images had those captions. But there were very few women who were writing long posts in Malayalam or English on their own on Facebook. This was done by professionals, say journalists or doctors, engineers, or really educated, professionally educated women belonging to the very comfortable lifestyles. So that is where original content in form of text was happening, but the larger content was in the form of images. And also trolls. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Aparna. I don't think there are any more questions coming up. Vandana ma'am?
Yeah, we can hand it over to Chaitali.
Chaitali? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Chaitali, over to you.
Thank you so much, Aparna ma'am, for patiently addressing all our questions. It was delight listening to your insights.
It was a delight to talk about them.
As the program draws to an end, I would like to really thank you for such an insightful talk. Thank you, Nilay Yagnik, the provost, for the encouragement of the event. Thank you, Archana ma'am. Thank you to all the attendees who joined us today for the talk. Thank you, Dinesh sir, for your technical help. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aparna. Very informative, very interesting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
And do keep in touch with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm leaving now.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
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 Bye.